Imagine a country where alpine peaks rise above 5,000 meters into the sky, while only 200 kilometers away, subtropical beaches line the Black Sea. A country whose monasteries are carved into cliff faces as if they were part of the mountains themselves. Georgia, wedged between the highest peaks in Europe and the Black Sea, unites geological extremes with one of the oldest cultures on the continent. Here, where continental plates collide and still cause mountains to grow, a civilization developed that placed its greatest structures not on top of, but within the landscape. Here, Christianity was declared the state religion as early as the 4th century, long before it reached the rest of Europe. Here, Greek mythology located the Golden Fleece, and here the Silk Road passed through. But what makes this country at the edge of Europe so extraordinary? Why do geologists call Georgia a living laboratory of tectonic processes? And how did this dramatic nature shape a culture that today ranks among the oldest in the world? In this video, we take you on a journey through a country that combines geological wonders with thousands of years of history. If you enjoy this exploration, feel free to subscribe to the channel. More documentaries about the hidden treasures of our world await you. The Great Caucasus is not simply a mountain range. It is a geological scar formed by the monumental collision of two continental plates. For approximately 25 million years, the Arabian and Eurasian plates have been pushing into each other at a rate of about 2 centimeters per year. The result, a mountain range that is still growing. 5 of the 10 highest peaks in Europe are located in Georgia. Mount Mtskheta, at 5,193 meters, towers over the Svaneti region as the country's highest mountain. Right beside it stands Mount Kazbek at 5,047 meters, a near-perfect volcanic cone that has fired the imagination of people for thousands of years. Greek mythology placed the chaining of Prometheus here, a metaphor for the seemingly unconquerable power of these mountains. What makes the Great Caucasus geologically so fascinating is its diversity. Within just a few kilometers, the rock types shift from Mesozoic limestones to crystalline bedrock, from schists to volcanic formations. In the higher elevations, glaciers are found that rank among the southernmost in Europe. Yet these ice giants are melting. Satellite imagery from the past 40 years documents a retreat of approximately 30%. The valleys that cut into this mountain world tell their own story. The Trousseau Valley at the foot of Mount Kazbek, for example, is a geothermal wonderland. Mineral springs in all shades, from rust red to sulfur yellow to iron-tinged orange, bubble up from the ground. Travertine formations, built up over thousands of years, testify to the volcanic activity that simmers beneath the surface. The famous Georgian military highway, which has connected Georgia with Russia since antiquity, winds through this mountain world. At its highest point, the Javari Pass, At 2,395 meters, the sheer verticality of this landscape becomes tangible. Within just 50 kilometers, the road climbs over 2,000 meters in elevation, one of the steepest mountain roads in the world. Deep in Svaneti, the remote mountain region in the northwest, isolation created by the Caucasus has preserved a unique culture. The medieval defensive towers that define every village here are also a response to geography. In a land where avalanches and rockfalls are everyday occurrences, one had to build upward in order to survive. In southern Georgia, where the Lesser Caucasus transitions into smaller plateaus, a cliff rises above the Mtskheta River. From a distance, it appears unremarkable, just another rock face in a landscape full of rocks. But upon closer inspection, an extraordinary secret reveals itself. The wall is riddled with hundreds of windows, balconies, and entrances. Vardzia, a city carved into the rock that once housed 6,000 people. In the 12th century, under the reign of Queen Tamar, Vardzia was hewn as a fortress and monastery from the volcanic tough stone. The builders penetrated 13 levels deep into the mountain. A system of tunnels, staircases, and halls emerged, completely hidden from enemy eyes. The outer facade was originally fully concealed by rock. Only an earthquake in the 13th century blasted away the outer layer, exposing the inner city. The architecture is a masterpiece of adaptation. The rock chambers follow the natural weak points in the stone. Where the rock was softer, the builders created large halls. The main church, adorned with 12th century frescoes, depicts Queen Tamar and her father George III in radiant colors, a rare contemporary portrait of one of the most powerful rulers of the Middle Ages. Vardzia's water system was highly advanced. Ceramic pipes channeled water from a spring above the city to every level. An irrigation system supplied terraces on which vegetables and grain were cultivated. Wine cellars carved into the rock stored provisions. Vardzia was not just a fortress, it was a self-sufficient community capable of withstanding sieges lasting months. Yet Vardzia is not unique. Georgia is dotted with rock settlements and cave monasteries. Mtskheta, situated on the ancient Silk Road, was inhabited as early as the early Iron Age. For over 3,000 years it was a thriving center of trade. The structures carved into the sandstone display a remarkable richness of detail. Column capitals, reliefs, even a pharmacy can be identified. David Gareja, the desert monastery on the border with Azerbaijan, tells a different story. In the 6th century, Syrian monks created here a center of scholarship and spirituality. The caves, decorated with frescoes of extraordinary quality, document the artistic exchange between Byzantium and Persia. A cultural melting pot in the most barren of environments. These rock settlements are more than archaeological curiosities. They are testimonies of a civilization that placed its greatest structures not on, but within the landscape. Rather than building against nature, Georgians built with it. The rock provided protection against invaders, insulation from extreme temperatures, and stability against earthquakes. What may appear to be primitive dwellings was, in reality, highly sophisticated engineering. When tectonic forces pile up mountains, water responds with erosion. In Georgia, this ancient conflict has created landscapes of breathtaking drama. The Mtskheta Canyon in the west of the country is a lesson in geological layering. The limestone walls, up to 40 meters high, read like a book of Earth's history. Each layer represents a different geological epoch, a different sea that once rolled here. The turquoise river winding through the canyon still plays its part today, wearing down these walls millimeter by millimeter. The Caucasus Canyon, just a few kilometers away, offers an even more spectacular spectacle. Here the Caucasus River has carved a canyon that, in some places, is barely wider than the river itself. A steel walkway clinging to the cliff face at dizzying heights allows visitors to experience this verticality firsthand. Below, the roar of the water; above, a narrow strip of sky framed by overhanging rock walls. The Nguri Canyon in the north is the manifestation of raw geological force. The Nguri River, which plunges down from the Great Caucasus, has created a gorge that, in some places, is over 300 meters deep. At its floor, one of the world's highest arch dams was constructed in 1980. A structure that attempts to tame the very natural forces that shaped this landscape. What makes these canyons so significant is their role as ecological corridors. In their moist microclimates, plant species thrive that are found nowhere else in the region. The Colchic flora, a relic from the time before the Ice Ages, has survived here long after it vanished elsewhere in Europe. Ferns that grow 2 meters tall, lianas that wind around ancient trees, as in a tropical rainforest. Over 400 endemic plant species have been counted in Georgia. "200 kilometers west of the icy peaks of the Caucasus, an entirely different world opens up. The Colchic plain along the Black Sea is a subtropical oasis, humid, warm, and bursting with vegetation. Ancient Colchis, today's western Georgia, was in Greek mythology the destination of the Argonauts. Here Jason sought the Golden Fleece. The myths had a real foundation. The rivers of western Georgia carried gold, which the inhabitants filtered from the water using sheepskins. A gold-soaked fleece was no fairy tale, it was mining technology. Today, the region is defined by a remarkable ecological diversity. The Colchic National Park protects the last remnants of the Colchic rainforest, an ecosystem that exists in this form nowhere else on Earth. Wetlands, among the largest in Europe, provide resting places for millions of migratory birds. In autumn, flocks of cormorants, pelicans, and storks darken the sky. The climate here is shaped by the Black Sea and the mountains to the east. The Colchic plain is one of the wettest places in Europe, with up to 2,500 millimeters of precipitation falling annually. The combination of warmth and humidity allows subtropical plants to flourish. Tea is cultivated here, bamboo grows wild, and laurel trees reach the height of oaks. Batumi, the largest city in the region, is a focal point of this transformation. Once a sleepy Black Sea port, it is today a booming seaside resort. The development is not without problems. Construction threatens wetlands, and light pollution disturbs migratory birds. Yet there are approaches to reconciling tourism and conservation. The Batumi Botanical Garden, one of the largest in the Caucasus region, is an example of how preservation and education can go hand in hand. While western Georgia drowns in rain, a surprisingly different world prevails in the east and southeast, steppe and semi-desert. The mountains act as a climatic barrier, and, in the rain shadow of the Caucasus, some areas receive fewer than 300 millimeters of precipitation per year. The Vashlavani nature reserves in the far southeast represent this arid world in its most extreme form. Here at the border with Azerbaijan, mud volcanoes bubble up from the ground. Geological curiosities where methane gas pushes mud to the surface. Some are only a few meters high, others reach up to 400 meters in diameter. The landscape appears otherworldly. Bizarre rock formations rise from the parched plain. Colors shift from ochre to rust red to dusty gray. In this seemingly hostile environment, life nonetheless thrives. Persian gazelles roam the plains, striped hyenas, nocturnal and elusive, hunt here. Caravanserais, today crumbling ruins, bear witness to the era when the Silk Road passed through these steppes. Silk from China, spices from India, precious metals from the Caucasus, all flowed through this seemingly empty landscape. The Javakiti Plateau in the south tells a different story. Situated at 2,000 meters above sea level, it is a volcanic landscape full of extinct craters. In winter, temperatures plunge to minus 30 degrees Celsius. In summer, it can reach 40 degrees. Yet this very plateau becomes an ornithological paradise in spring and autumn. Crater lakes such as Lake Paravani become resting places for thousands of migratory birds, cranes, flamingos, pelicans, all using this plateau as a stopover. In spring, the steppe transforms for a few weeks into a carpet of blossoms. Poppies, irises, and wild tulips explode in color before the summer heat withers everything away. "30 kilometers northwest of Tbilisi, at the confluence of two rivers, lies Mtskheta, Georgia's ancient capital and spiritual heart of the nation. Here, in the year 337, Christianity was declared the state religion. Georgia is thus among the oldest Christian nations in the world. The Svetitskovely Cathedral, built in the 11th century, is one of the most significant works of Georgian architecture. Its name means life-giving pillar. According to legend, a cedar grew here from the robe of Christ and became the pillar of the first church. The cathedral is a masterpiece of medieval craftsmanship. Its frescoes have endured for over 1,000 years. Above the city stands Jvari Monastery, built in the 6th century, considered the architectural prototype for Georgian cross-domed churches. From here, one has a panoramic view of the rivers, the city, and the mountains in the background. The Silk Road passed through Mtskheta. In ancient graves, archaeologists have found objects from around the world: Roman glass, Persian coins, Chinese silk. Just a few kilometers away, wine country begins. The Kakheti region produces over 70% of Georgian wine. The tradition is 8,000 years old. In clay vessels called kvevri, holding up to 2,000 liters, wines mature using methods that have remained unchanged for millennia. These vessels buried in the ground use the earth as a natural temperature regulator. Over 500 autochthonous grape varieties exist in Georgia, more than in any other country in the world. Saperavi, a red grape with deep red juice, produces wines of extraordinary depth. Okatsiteli thrives on the dry plains. Yet there are also rarities, grape varieties that grow in only a single valley. Winemaking in Georgia is more than agriculture. It is identity. The autumn grape harvest, called Vatveli, is a festival at which entire villages come together. Grapes are crushed underfoot, and songs accompany the work. Today, Georgian wine is experiencing a renaissance. Young winemakers are combining ancient methods with new knowledge, and international sommeliers are discovering Georgian wines. Georgia's nature has shaped not only the landscape, but also the people who live here. In the mountains of Svaneti, isolated communities developed a society based on clans and mutual support. The defensive towers that define every village are symbols of this culture, built for protection, but also as expressions of pride and identity. Georgian polyphony, a UNESCO World Heritage tradition since 2001, was born in these mountains. Multi-voice song so complex that musicologists date its origins to pre-Christian times. Georgian cuisine is a direct product of geography. Khachapuri, the national dish, varies from region to region. Khinkali, the filled dumplings, originated as provisions for shepherds in the mountains. Yet life in these extreme landscapes is demanding. Svaneti struggles with rural depopulation. Young people move to the cities. At the same time, sustainable tourism has created new opportunities. families offer guest rooms, guide hikers along mountain paths, and share their traditions. In Tbilisi, the capital is experiencing a creative renaissance. A young generation is redefining Georgian identity between tradition and modernity, between Europe and Asia. Design, film, music, new forms of expression are emerging everywhere. The old question of whether Georgia belongs to Europe or Asia is becoming increasingly irrelevant. Georgia's nature is nonetheless under pressure. Decades of Soviet industrialization left scars. After independence in 1991, economic hardship deepened the problems. Yet over the past 2 decades, a rethinking has taken hold. Georgia today has 14 protected areas, covering approximately 9% of its land surface. The success story is the return of the Caucasian leopard. Since 2003, sightings have increased in the east of the country. A population of an estimated 10 to 15 animals has emerged, fragile but a glimmer of hope. The Caucasian bison is also returning. In Bojomi Karagoli, they are being resettled. There are 50 animals today. Every newborn calf is a small victory. The challenges remain real. Hydropower projects threaten free-flowing rivers. The political wounds, the occupied territories of Abkhazia and South Ossetia since 2008, have not healed. Some of the most beautiful natural landscapes are unreachable for Georgian citizens. Yet, despite everything, the prevailing mood is forward-looking. Georgia has survived crises that would have broken other nations. The Soviet era, the chaotic 1990s, the war of 2008. Each time, the people found a way to carry on. This resilience is the true legacy of the landscape. In this landscape lies a heritage of resilience. Those who live in a land shaken by earthquakes, where avalanches can swallow entire villages in winter, where nature simultaneously creates and destroys, develop a particular mentality, calm, tenacious, unshakable. The certainty that life flows on because it must flow on. With this hope, Georgia steps into its future. Georgia is a laboratory of extremes. Here, continental plates collide and create mountains that are still growing. Here, water has carved canyons over millions of years that rank among the most dramatic in the world. Here, glaciers and subtropical forests, steppes and rainforests exist within the smallest of spaces. Yet, Georgia's true wonder is not geological. It is the fact that people in this dramatic landscape have not merely survived, but have created a culture that ranks among the oldest and richest in the world. A culture that today faces the challenge of balancing tradition and modernity, development and conservation. Georgia's future will depend on whether this balancing act succeeds, whether the glaciers of the Caucasus are preserved for generations to come, whether the last leopards can multiply, whether the defensive towers of Svaneti do not crumble into ruins, but remain living witnesses of a continuing story. If you would like to learn more about the hidden natural wonders of the world, subscribe to the channel and let us know in the comments. Which region of the Earth should we explore next? Thank you very much for your time.